If it's Tuesday, the end of Title 42 pandemic-era border policy could come any minute as migrants, border communities, and the White House all brace for a decision from the Supreme Court and a potential surge in border crossings. Plus, winter storm nightmare. The nationwide death toll is now over 60 as tens of thousands of travelers are stranded after Southwest Airlines cancels so many flights that the Biden administration is looking into what went wrong. And Congressman-elect George Santos now admitting he lied about his college education, his work on Wall Street, and more. The Republican who flipped a House seat in November, defiant in the face of calls for him to resign, insisting he will be sworn into office. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. We begin today waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court on the pandemic-era public health directive known as Title 42. At any moment, the High Court could decide to let the program expire. Title 42 allows border officials to turn away most asylum seekers due to concerns about COVID. After a series of legal challenges, the policy was set to expire last week, but the Supreme Court issued a temporary stay. Now, a group of Republican state attorneys general who sued to keep Title 42 in place say the policy is necessary to stem illegal immigration. They argue lifting it now would cause a surge at the border on top of the record number of crossings we've already seen in 2022. Immigration advocates argue Title 42 violates the right to asylum that is protected under U.S. law, and thousands of migrants coming to the border are fleeing violence in their home countries. Now, the Biden administration has asked the Supreme Court for a short pause on lifting Title 42 until today so they could prepare resources at the border. My NBC News colleague Sam Brock filed this report from El Paso earlier today.
On the streets of El Paso, temperatures were in the 30s again overnight as so many people just trying to stay warm. The issue right now, capacity at shelters. I'm standing next to a church here. The church next to me has a capacity of about a couple hundred people in the basement. It's full. So you're finding folks in the crevice between the metal gate and the building itself on the dirt there in sleeping bags if they're lucky, or blankets that they have received, not necessarily from the government, but from local charity groups here and from Good Samaritans who are handing out clothes and food and other forms of aid. Behind me, you see all the folks that are huddled here. This was all bodies in blankets this morning, all crammed together. There's a bus next to them where you can go for brief respites of warmth, but otherwise they're dealing with these frigid conditions. And I'm also talking to people who are coming largely from Venezuela, some from Honduras, who waited months to get to this day because they were promised, they believe, from the administration here, the Title 42 was going to be lifted on December 21st. That's when a federal judge said it was going to be pulled away. And yet the Supreme Court, of course, issued that stay. And so now they are all here in limbo.
Those images just stunning. Of course, here's the real issue, folks. To really fix the asylum process and the situation at the border, there has to be political will from Democrats and from Republicans. But as has been the case for more than a decade now, that political will just does not seem to exist. And it's led to frustration from local leaders dealing with the consequences. Take a listen to Denver Mayor Michael Hancock on this program earlier this month.
Do the job that the people have sent you to Congress to do. We didn't send you there to play partisan politics. We sent you there to take care of the American people and to take care of, quite frankly, our role as a global leader. And right now we're being called. So meet the challenge with the leadership that is being called for at this point in time.
Well, folks, whether it is today or another day, Title 42 will eventually expire. And at that point, politicians in Washington, officials at the border, and migrants will have to deal with the fallout. We will speak to Mayor Hancock in just a moment. But first, joining me from outside the White House is NBC's Josh Letterman. So, Josh, take me inside the White House, the West Wing. What's the thinking right now? They say they're prepared for Title 42 to expire. But are you learning any details about what that might look like?
As prepared as anyone can be for this anticipated surge of migrants, Kristen, White House officials that I've been speaking with say that they are preparing to send additional resources to the area through the Department of Homeland Security to those border states, Texas, Arizona, etc. They also say that the State Department has been speaking directly with some of those countries that Sam was just talking about, whose citizens are the ones who are largely showing up here in the United States, trying to address the problem at the origin. But the reality is White House officials acknowledge that there's really no amount of resources that you can simply throw at this problem at this point in time that's going to somehow stem this surge of migrants coming over the border, given the very dire circumstances that they are leaving. And so the question really is, what else can the administration do? Should they try to push for some type of legislation, some type of broader fix, as you were just discussing? That is something that got a little bit of attention really in the lame duck session, as there were discussions between Senators Tillis and Sinema about some potential immigration compromise, but it kind of lost steam as we got into the end of the year and Christmas, and now there doesn't seem to be any discussions that we know about that are really moving forward on a legislative fix. And so instead, the administration looking at other ways that they can deal with this, including potentially curtailing some of the ways that people can get in through asylum, particularly if they have transited through a third country like Mexico and did not first apply and get rejected for asylum in those countries. So you can see, Kristen, that there is a dearth of good options for the administration. At this point, it is really about trying to put Band-Aids onto a problem that just keeps getting worse by the day.
It certainly does. Josh Letterman, I know you are tracking this closely. We all continue to watch our phones to see if there's been any update from the Supreme Court. Josh Letterman, thank you so much. We really appreciate your reporting. Joining me now is Denver, Colorado Mayor Michael Hancock. Mayor Hancock, thank you so much for joining me to discuss this really critical issue. We appreciate it.
Happy holidays, Kristen. Good to be with you.
Happy holidays to you, Mayor. I know that you are dealing with an influx of migrants there in Denver, hundreds of them. I'm wondering if you have a count how many there actually are, and what is the current status right now of these migrants? Do you have enough room for them?
The reality is, no, we don't. Cities are not equipped with resources to deal with such a major influx. I noticed your reporter talked about border states, and states like Colorado, who are not border states, are starting to feel the impact. What we have seen since I activated our Emergency Operations Center about 3 weeks ago, early part of December, some 2,300 migrants have come to Denver. 1,400 were sheltered last night in our city. And that raises the number of folks that we shelter on a nightly basis, including our unhoused in Denver, by 70%. A city like Denver, who's not on the border, are simply not equipped to address these type of challenges. And so we've exceeded our capacity, and really calling on the federal government to act swiftly to help cities like Denver and El Paso and Chicago and Tucson address this challenge.
Well, let's talk about the state and federal governments. As you just noted, you had declared a state of emergency. Have you gotten the resources that you need from the state? Clearly, you're saying you haven't. What more do you need from the state? What more do you need from the federal government? And have you been in touch with President Biden about this?
Yeah, I've been in touch with the Biden administration, had a very good conversation with them. I got to believe, and they have pretty much shared that obviously they are working on a strategy with regards to Title 42, Title 42 determination by the Supreme Court. I've also, of course, talked to our governor, who is also looking at this situation and recognizing that a city like Denver cannot handle this by itself. The state has leaned in. They're helping us with transportation. They're helping us with case management. They're also helping us with managing donations that are coming in. But the reality is this. This is not going to ease anytime soon. We expect probably in the next week or two, another 1,000 migrants are headed to our city. We're at or have exceeded our capacity. It's time to consider other cities to land at, because we don't want a humanitarian crisis on our streets in Denver. And it's cold in Denver, just like it is in El Paso. And I don't want to see migrants or anyone, native or foreign born, on our streets having to weather these very cold temperatures in our city. But we've expended over $3 million so far trying to at least address the situation. The reality is, Kristen, what's most important right now is shelter space. We need shelter space and the bodies to handle them. And hopefully the federal government and the state will recognize that they've got to do some extraordinary things like cities like Denver are doing now and taking down their rec centers and putting people in their gymnasiums, at least for a temporary measure.
Well, Mayor, I hear you basically describing that your city has been stretched to the limit. And here we are bracing for the possibility that Title 42 could be lifted. What exactly would that mean for Denver if Title 42 is lifted? Because even the Biden administration has acknowledged, yes, there will likely be an initial surge at the border. Yeah, I mean,
it's quite concerning and worrisome. But let me be very clear, and I've said this in every interview. Title 42 has been it's only been in place for a very brief time. So regulation has been in place for a very brief time. And you said this at the start of your segment. The reality is that we've had this challenge with immigration for a decade or more. And Congress has played partisan politics. And now cities that are not on the border, like Denver, are being overwhelmed and resources stretched and overwhelmed. And we have to find a way to address it short term and beyond Title 42. So while we are respectful of the Supreme Court and its decision making that's about to take place, the reality is that Congress needs to join with the administration and find a compassionate, humanitarian way to address the challenges that we're facing at our border and allow and help municipalities to address the challenges with the finite resources or lack thereof and trying to hit this challenge we're seeing.
Mayor, very quickly, before I let you go, the Biden administration, as I was just talking about with Josh, has said, look, we have a plan in place. We are prepared to deal with this. Yes, there may be an initial surge. However, it will even out over time. Do you have confidence that the Biden administration has a plan?
Yeah, I have in conversations with them. There's nothing ever in my interactions with the Biden administration where they have not followed through what they have said they wanted to do with cities and states on any issue. And in my conversations with a lot of his officials there, they have shared with me that there is a strategy and plan coming forward. They understand the sense of urgency.
You think it's a workable plan, Mayor? Because it's one thing to have something on paper. It's another thing to actually see it play out in an effective way.
Here's what they know, and because they have mayors or former mayors in the administration, the stress that's on cities and the fact that we need a short-term and a long-term strategy to address this challenge. And I expect, and I know that they have tried to assure me that they are working on a short and long-range strategy to address it. But the reality is that in order to put this America in the right place, Congress needs to work with the administration to find a long-term fix.
Okay, Mayor Hancock, thank you so much for joining us. And joining me now to continue this conversation is ACLU civil rights lawyer Lee Gelernt. You led the organization's lawsuit over Title 42. Please, yes, you want to jump right in.
We just learned that the Supreme Court has granted the stay by the 19 states to keep Title 42 in place and is intending to hear the case this term, meaning a ruling by the end of June on whether the states were improperly denied the right to intervene. We are deeply disappointed that the court will keep Title 42 in place. It was always supposed to be temporary. It has done grave harm to thousands of desperate people, but this is a temporary setback and we will continue fighting.
This is so let's just be very clear about this news that has come out. Because you are saying this, NBC News has not reported this. I'm waiting to hear that we have officially kind of confirmed the details that you have gotten. You are reporting.
Well, I'm getting it directly from the court.
Okay.
From the lawyer.
So you are getting this directly from the court. And again, not clear if NBC News has gotten this yet from the court. But based on what you are getting directly from the court has ruled that Title 42 will remain in place and they will hear arguments at a later date, correct?
Correct.
So talk about the implications of this, because as you have argued, you obviously submitted your brief arguing that it should be lifted, that it is inhumane. And yet the 19 Republican-led states that wanted it to stay in place said, look, if it's lifted, it would lead to an influx in migrants. How do you respond?
I think any short-term influx can be handled. It's going to be short-term, but we can't keep Title 42 in place long term. It was a public health measure. That public health justification has long been gone. If we want to talk about revising the asylum system, we can do that. We can't use a public health measure. There is real harm that's occurring. Families are being literally sent to walk a plank directly into the hands of cartels. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit said this is stomach-churning evidence. We can talk about creating a new asylum system if people want. We're not against a more fair and efficient system, but we can't misuse a public health justification. The federal government can handle the surge. They were prepared for it. This is deeply disappointing, but the case is not over, and we'll continue to fight.
So let's just talk about what is happening right now. You have thousands of migrants who are lined up at the U.S.-Mexico border who are anticipating, waiting for this decision by the Supreme Court, waiting to see if, in fact, they could file asylum claims. Because, again, Title 42 staying in place makes it a lot easier for border officials to essentially say, no, you are ineligible to file asylum claims. This was a Trump-era law that was put in place under the argument that we were in the midst of fighting COVID-19, that there was a public health crisis. You are arguing that public health crisis has abated, and therefore Title 42 should be lifted. What happens in the coming days, in the coming weeks, Lee, to those migrants who are at the border right now, who are waiting for this very decision?
They're going to be stranded and in real harm. They are. I mean, your lead-in showed how difficult the conditions are, especially because of the cold. But I think more importantly, they're sitting ducks for cartels sitting in Mexico. And so we're talking about real harm. Title 42 does not give them an asylum hearing. If Title 42 had been lifted, we could have gone back to our regular immigration processing pre-pandemic, but that's now going to have to wait for a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court this term. So we're going to just keep fighting. This has been in place far too long. The states notably did not even make an argument that this is for public health. That pretense is long gone. They're simply saying we need it as a border management tool, but the public health laws were never intended to be a border health tool, border management tool. And so we're looking at families who are just going to be desperately in need of a hearing. Title 42 does not give you a hearing at all. I just want to be clear as my last point here that we are not saying everyone's entitled to asylum. We are saying everyone is entitled to at least a hearing. People need to understand that Title 42 gives you no hearing whatsoever. And it doesn't matter how you come, that there's this misconception that if you just come legally, Title 42 allows you to get an asylum hearing. That's not true. Title 42 eliminates asylum hearings no matter how you come, even if you present yourself legally at a port of entry. So, we'll keep fighting.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Lee, obviously we are processing this in real time. Is this what, I know you were bracing for the possibility of both options, but is this what you were expecting today?
We were preparing for either outcome. And so, I never try to predict what the Supreme Court will do. We're prepared for it either way, and now we just need to roll up our sleeves and continue fighting.
And what are the next steps? Take me inside the ACLU. Once you are off of this air, what are the conversations that are going to be unfolding inside the ACLU about next steps to revive this argument within the Supreme Court?
Right. So the court is going to have a briefing schedule, and the states will go first. I'm not actually sure. This happened on the air. It may be that we're going next. I think the state's application for a stay maybe have been treated as a petition for what's called a petition for certiorari. So it may be that we go next. I'm not entirely sure. I apologize, probably get off and look to see what the court has.
Before you get off air, can you just respond to what we heard from Mayor Hancock in Denver? He said, look, he has faith in the Biden administration that if and when Title 42 is lifted, that they do have a plan in place. And yet you heard the urgency in his voice. They are a community that has been stressed by an influx of migrants right now, and they're really concerned about what might happen if and when Title 42 is in fact lifted.
Yeah, I think the federal government has more than enough resources to deal with it, and it's just a matter of using them, right? We saw when the Ukrainians came, we surged resources, and we dealt with that very quickly. You know, there may be short-term surges, and there may be some chaos in the very beginning for a few days, but the federal government has more than enough resources. It's just a matter of where there's a will, there's a way, and so we understand localities wanting the federal government to use those resources. I think what needs to happen is Title 40 needs to be lifted, and then it's no longer to be a crutch, and the federal government needs to surge those resources. There are the resources, especially working with NGOs, and I think the states are ready to be a willing partner. We just need to get that resources going. But for now, Title 42 remains in place, so we will continue fighting.
And Lee, NBC has just gotten the ruling, so I'm literally just getting it as we speak. Is there a key graph as you read this that stands out to you?
So I've been on the phone with you. I mean, on Zoom with you the whole time. I have not even read it, so I apologize. I need to jump in and read it.
Don't apologize. We're gonna read it in real time as well. Lee, I really appreciate your breaking the news here. You're being with us on air and answering all of these questions. Again, the Supreme Court has ruled to allow Title 42 to stay in place for now. Lee Gelernt, thank you so much. We're going to be following this breaking news. Really appreciate it. We are going to be following this breaking news, and we'll bring you any response from the White House as we get it. Of course, we are reaching out to them urgently, reaching out to all sides on this issue. We'll continue to follow it throughout the hour. Coming up, chaos, cancellations, and criticism. The Biden administration says they're investigating Southwest's thousands of canceled flights that have left travelers stranded all across the country. We're live at one of the busiest airports on one of the busiest travel days. Next. Plus, China's latest move in their abrupt end to their zero COVID policy, as the surge of infections there is sparking concerns of a new global variant. You're watching Meet the Press now. Stay with us. I just want to update everyone on the breaking news at this hour. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled just moments ago to allow Title 42, that Trump-era immigration policy, to stay in place, saying that they will hear arguments about this at a later date. So what does this mean? This means that border officials still have the authority to turn away migrants more easily at the border. This policy was first put in place. It was a pandemic-era policy. The argument in the Trump administration was that this was needed for public health reasons, but opponents say it's no longer needed, that we've turned the corner on the pandemic, and that this is an inhumane policy. So we are awaiting reaction from the White House. We are awaiting reaction from all sides. But obviously, we were just speaking with Lee Gelernt of the ACLU, who denounced this ruling, continued to insist that this is an inhumane policy. So we will continue to follow this breaking news for you and bring you any reaction as we get it. In the meantime, we do want to turn to our other big story, and that is the weather. Snow is finally showing signs of stopping in upstate New York, the area hardest hit by that massive winter storm that swept across the country this holiday weekend. Officials have reopened major highways in the western part of the state, and Erie County has lifted driving bans for most cities, with the exception of Buffalo, which recorded over 4 feet of snow. The mayor of Buffalo confirmed 28 deaths in that city alone as a result of the storm. Nationwide, at least 65 deaths have been recorded. President Biden approved an emergency declaration request for the state late yesterday. The storm also brought frigid temperatures to southern states not used to the cold. Parts of South Carolina, Tennessee, and Louisiana are currently under boil water notices, along with Jackson, Mississippi, yet again after a year of on and off water crisis. Meanwhile, travelers across the country are experiencing flight frustrations as Southwest Airlines canceled 71% of its flights nationwide on Monday, and with thousands more already canceled today and tomorrow. The Department of Transportation said it was concerned by the, quote, disproportionate and unacceptable rate of cancellations and delays, and said it will be examining whether or not they were controllable. Joining me now from Los Angeles International Airport is NBC's Nyala Charles with the very latest on the travel mess. So, Nyala, what are travelers saying there about these headaches that they've been dealing with?
Well, these headaches, Kristen, are more like migraines because they're seeing red literally and figuratively there on the boards where there are a ton of cancellations. Southwest Airlines saying today all of the departing flights out of Southern California are unavailable through New Year's Eve. So as a result of that, we've seen thousands of flights canceled from Southwest across the country, hundreds here in LAX just today alone. And because of that, the passengers are frustrated. We spoke to one family who was supposed to leave on the 23rd and has been stranded here in LA for several days without any of their clothes or medications that were in their bags because they weren't told that their flight was canceled until after they checked in their bags and after what they thought would be a delay turned into a cancellation. So that family from Texas has decided to take a 20-hour drive from here in LA to Austin, Texas, so that they can be home by New Year's Eve. So it's been really difficult for the people affected. And like you said, Kristen, it's also been disproportionate because according to FlightAware, just today alone, 63% of the canceled flights are Southwest flights. So although Southwest is telling us in a statement that its challenges are due to the winter storm that's affecting the country and other airlines, it seems that they're having a more difficult time dealing with this. Kristen?
All right, Nyala, thank you. Turning now to a different kind of travel news. China now says it will end quarantine for incoming travelers. This is a major deal beginning January 8th. It is the latest move by Beijing. The country continues to abruptly roll back its strict zero COVID policy. Health officials also downgraded the management of COVID-19, limiting lockdowns and ending mandatory testing. And it comes as China faces a surge of COVID cases. The Chinese National Health Commission has stopped publishing daily COVID data, but anecdotal evidence shows overwhelmed hospitals, stores with medicine running low, and crowded crematoriums suggesting cases on the rise. The surge in China has also raised concerns that a new COVID variant could emerge. Joining me now to discuss all of this is Dr. William Schaffner, professor of preventive medicine and infectious diseases at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. He's also the medical director of the National Foundation for Infectious Diseases. Dr. Schaffner, thank you so much for joining me. Can I first just have you respond to this news out of China that they are lifting their travel bans effectively?
Well, Kristen, it is, as you said, very, very big news. Here, China is now opening the door for its own citizens to go out and people from the rest of the world to come back to China and engage in commercial and perhaps even tourist activities. So this is really a big turnaround. And I think along with that travel will come the virus, of course, and it will contribute to the spread of COVID within China, which, as you say, anecdotally, I hear also is spreading very, very widely and is straining healthcare facilities in a very substantial way.
All right. Well, let's talk big picture. How concerned are you about the possibility of a new variant, particularly as people are gathering over this holiday season?
Well, in addition to the humanitarian concerns for people affected in China, that's the other concern that's on the mind of public health and infectious disease people. You know, mutations occur when the virus is multiplying. And if the virus is spreading, making new infections, it's multiplying by the billions constantly, which increases the statistical chance that a new variant will occur, a new variant that could possibly evade the protection of our current vaccines and our therapeutic agents. That's the great worry. And so there's global surveillance watching the strains that are occurring in China to see if there's a new variant out there.
And as we watch for that, obviously, we are dealing with what has been called a triple-demic here in the U.S. COVID, flu, RSV. There were some early indications that perhaps flu and RSV were tapering off. But what are you seeing right now, again, as we get closer to the new year? Are you concerned that cases are ticking back up? And what should people know?
Well, we've had all this travel, right? And people getting together and the joyous celebrations and now the anticipated, exciting New Year's celebrations. Those are all circumstances that lend themselves to the transmission of these respiratory viruses. So we're braced. We anticipate a post-holiday surge in flu and perhaps also in COVID. We hope RSV stays down, but we'll see. This is the usual season when RSV starts to go up. So it also could rise again. So we're not out of the woods by any matter of means.
Yeah, that is for sure. How concerned are you about vaccine hesitancy, particularly when you see the, frankly, low rates, lower than last year rates of people going out to get a booster shot?
Well, I was just going to say the best thing you can do if you haven't been vaccinated is to get the COVID booster and also to get the influenza vaccine. And the vaccine hesitancy and reluctance is a matter of great concern, not only for this year, but going forward in years in the future, where we're going to have to ask people to periodically boost their immunity, as we do kind of traditionally for influenza. We're likely to have to do that same thing for COVID. And we would hope that we could work to restore the trust in science and in public health, knowing that they're working for the benefit of the health of the population of the United States.
All right, Dr. William Schaffner, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights. Well, after the break, we're going to go back to the breaking news out of the Supreme Court that broke during this hour. The Supreme Court is keeping the Trump-era immigration policy known as Title 42 in place. What are the implications? We'll delve into all of it. You're watching Meet the Press now. Stay with us. Welcome back. Turning back to the news that the ACLU's Lee Gelernt broke on our air at the top of the hour. The Supreme Court ruling keeping the Trump-era Title 42 border policy in place for now. The ruling was a 5-4 decision with Justice Neil Gorsuch joining Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson in dissent. The court agreed to hold oral arguments on the matter, and in the meantime, Title 42 will remain in place. Now, the White House was hoping to see Title 42 lifted today, with thousands of migrants waiting at the southern border. At least they were saying they were prepared for the possibility that that could happen. NBC's Josh Letterman is at the White House. So, Josh, I know you've been reaching out to your sources. I've been reaching out to my sources. They were bracing for the possibility of a decision today, didn't know which way this was going to go. On the one hand, the CDC under the Biden administration has said, look, it's time to lift Title 42. There's no longer a health crisis in place. On the other hand, the administration knows that this would politically be very challenging.
Yeah, that's right, Kristen. This has been an awkward issue for the Biden administration because, as you pointed out, on the one hand, they want to do whatever they can to try to stem this flow of migrants that has become a huge political problem. It's been a humanitarian crisis, as we've been discussing. On the other hand, on its face, I think everyone kind of acknowledges that using a COVID policy instead of an immigration policy doesn't really make sense with where we are at this stage in the pandemic. Now, this decision from the Supreme Court to take this up really just kind of kicks this can down the road for the White House, because it means that this Title 42 will stay in place for now, which means they're not going to have to worry necessarily about this surge in the coming days, which is something the White House was very concerned about, particularly when they asked the Supreme Court. They said, look, even if you're going to lift this, at least give us 48 hours before that were to take place to start to put those transition plans into action, to surge resources to the border area. So that will happen. They will have not just 2 days. They will have at least until next year, with the Supreme Court saying that they will hold arguments in February and then decide many months after that. But ultimately, this is going to come back down to the same issue. This just really kind of pushes this into the future. And, for the White House, this is going to continue to be a difficult problem that they are facing as they head into this new year.
Yeah, this is really, Josh, one of the most politically challenging and frankly challenging from a policy perspective issues, not just for this White House, but you go back decades, quite frankly. This is something that Washington has wrestled with for more than a decade, how to deal with the issue of immigration, migrants, and also asylum. We are at a moment where Republicans are preparing to take over the House. And as I said at the top of this show, as you and I first started this conversation, really this comes down to ultimately a broader immigration policy. Do you have a sense that this will in any way energize or light a fire under those discussions in the new year with the new Congress to try to get something done on a broader, more fundamental level?
Well, that is certainly the million-dollar question. We had seen some interest in that toward the end of this year with discussions in the last weeks and months between Senators Tillis and Senator Sinema of Arizona on a potential compromise. That didn't really seem to go anywhere. It's certainly possible that this is going to kind of galvanize those conversations and make lawmakers say, look, we've got to deal with this through some legislative route. But the fact of the matter is they've been trying to do that for decades. They haven't been able to get any kind of common ground that would actually be able to address this. And I think if you even just look at what the Supreme Court is looking at here, they're not looking at an issue of immigration. They're not even looking at an issue of COVID-19 policy. They are looking at the very narrow issue about whether these Republican-led states have the right to be able to try to intervene and challenge the government's order. And I think that really speaks to just how convoluted this policy has gotten. Everyone understands our immigration policy doesn't work anymore, and they're trying to come up with these slapdash responses to try to hold the system together. If there is good news out of what took place today, it's that at least the status quo may stay in place for the next several months. For those who are worried about that border surge, that could potentially reduce some of those concerns. But, over the long haul, this is not a fix any more than putting Title 42 in place in the first place was a fix.
Yeah, it's such an important point, Josh, and you're so right to point out that all of this is happening against the backdrop of those tens of thousands of migrants who are lined up at the border, who were waiting for this ruling, hoping that it would go the other way. The question remains, what will happen with them? What will they do next? So we continue to track this. Josh, if you get any reaction from the White House, race right back to the camera. Thank you for your great reporting throughout the hour, though. For more now, I am joined by Sarah Fagen, Republican strategist who served as a White House political director for former President George W. Bush. She's also an NBC News contributor. Also with me is Jonathan Alter, an NBC News contributor. Thanks so much to both of you for being with me on what has now turned into a very busy news day. Sarah, let me start with you and just get your reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling.
Well, in one respect, it's surprising. I think many people thought that this would get overturned and that you would see kind of the previous policy in place, which we expected so many more people to cross the border under that prior policy. Having said all that, it's just another example. Either way, it is an example of the broken immigration policy in this country that isn't being properly managed. And the courts are now making the policy because, as you pointed out, for decades we've been unable to come up with sound immigration policy. And so now the courts are having to manage this, and different courts in different jurisdictions, of course, are interpreting the actions by the administration and now these attorneys general differently. And it's creating even more confusion and chaos at the border.
It really is, Sarah. You're absolutely right about that. Jonathan, what is your take on the Supreme Court's ruling and to what Sarah's saying, that it highlights this fundamental breakdown in Washington's ability to cope with this really critical issue of immigration and asylum?
The problem when there's a breakdown is that the Washington response is just to kick the can down the road. So they're going to have oral arguments before the Supreme Court in this case in February and expect some kind of decision in June. But that's on only a very narrow point. And the fundamental question of how to fix this system remains on the table. Now, people have been pessimistic on other issues like gun safety. And you'll recall that this year they actually got something done for the first time in 30 years. So hope springs eternal that they'll deal with this. And one impetus for this that I don't think has been getting enough attention is that when you ask about asylum, quite a number of the refugees seeking asylum right now are Cubans and Venezuelans. And they are legitimately seeking political asylum. And that asylum is very well respected on the right in this country. So that should incentivize Republicans to stop just using this as a political football and get serious about compromising with Democrats on the kind of comprehensive immigration
I think
reform that Democrats have wanted.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thought that Republicans are the challenge here is laughable, with all due respect. I mean, there is a policy that was put forward by my old boss almost 20 years ago that Democrats did not support. John McCain, Marco Rubio have tried to push this, and Democrats have always taken an all-or-nothing approach to immigration policy. If every person in the country illegal isn't granted citizenship, it's a no-go. And that's the challenge here, is that the sides are so diametrically opposed. What should be a relatively simple opportunity to come together, which is we need civil order in this country. And right now we don't have it on our border, and we haven't had it for years. And the situation is getting worse. We don't have anybody willing to compromise. It isn't a Republican problem. It is both parties' challenges.
Jonathan, what about that argument? And let me just add one thing. I want you to jump in, but let me add one point here. Have we gotten to a place where both parties see this as something that they can politically capitalize on the campaign trail? And does that essentially diminish their incentive to sit down at the table and deal with this issue? Jonathan, jump in.
This is where, so just to be clear, obviously, President Bush, was very sympathetic to the idea of real immigration reform. And you're right that there were periods in there some years ago where it was the Democrats who were standing in the way. But then through the entire Trump administration, there was not receptivity to doing this. And we had a build the wall policy coming out of the White House. Now, to your question, I do think there is a chance that the idea of making political hay out of this has run its course on both sides of the aisle. It's clearly a bad issue for Democrats right now. You had 233,000 apprehensions at the border in the month of November. It's just completely out of control, which is a terrible look for the Biden White House. But you also have, Republicans who are, I think, beginning to understand that just trying to, exploit resistance to immigration and pursue a Trumpian policy is not really working. And that's certainly not to use a COVID-era policy as a Band-Aid on the immigration problem. So it might be that, and I don't mean to sound Pollyannish, but we could be moving to a place where politically it's in the interests of both parties to compromise.
Sarah, do you see any signs of that? And again, pick up on that idea that in the post-Trump era, the conversation did shift. We were talking about a border wall. We were talking about all sorts of very strict limits on migration and immigration. Do you think that this could potentially be a moment where there's more urgency to get this done?
Well, I think the urgency is definitely there, and I don't think you'll get argument from anybody on that. I'm not as optimistic, though. If you think about the composition of the Congress, even though Democrats picked up, one net seat in the Senate, it is more Trumpian, if you will. If you think about the Republicans who left the Senate, they tended to be, more of the older mainline Republicans like Rob Portman and even Pat Toomey, among others. And those that are coming in who are Republicans tend to be more conservative. And so I think you're going to have fewer Republicans willing to compromise on the Democratic points. So I'm not as optimistic. I would like to think so. We certainly need a solution at the border. And we also need a solution for people who've been here for a long time. And Republicans are wise to acknowledge that. But we have not been able to come up with one yet.
The one thing I do want to talk about before we switch to another topic, the fact that we talked to the mayor of Denver, this is not a border state. The fact that you have a Democratic mayor who is saying, Our city is being impacted by a surge of migrants. It is stressing this city to its breaking point. Jonathan and Sarah, how does that impact, and Sarah, you can pick up on this first, how does that impact the conversation that we are not just talking about border states anymore, and we're not just talking about Republican governors who are fed up with the situation?
Right. Well, there have been millions of people who have come across the border in the last many years. And, you know, for all the folks that have come in over the last year, which is, you know, maybe a couple million, people estimate it's far greater than that, those who come here who go undetected through the border system. So you have potentially, certainly more than 10 million people who've been here over the course of the last, decade plus. At some point, there's not enough capacity in Arizona, Texas, and other places. They move for work. They're here to feed themselves and their families. And so they head to other cities and looking for work. And, you see it in the school system, you see it in the health system. There isn't capacity, and someone's got to pay for that. And local governments are getting taxed by that. And, look, some of these stunts that happened, if you will, flying, immigrants to other parts of the country, you can laugh at it or point a finger at it, but it actually got a lot of attention. And it makes the point is if the country's policy is to have no policy, it shouldn't be on 3 or 4 states to bear the entire burden. Then the country has to figure out how to distribute the burden. And
John and Sarah,
that stunt by the governor of Texas was pretty shameful on Christmas Eve, using human beings as political pawns. We need less of that. And I think if that blows up in their face and the American people don't respond well to that, that would help move us into not an optimistic place on immigration, but a little bit more hopeful that we can tamp down the politics and actually get something done.
All right, John and Sarah, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both so much for your insights about this breaking news, this issue that we're going to continue to talk about. Really appreciate it. But before we go to break, I do want to turn to Congressman-elect George Santos. He's been in the headlines lately. You've probably heard about this. He's now admitting that some of the details of his resume were not true. The New York Republican told the New York Post that he fabricated key details about his life, saying, quote, "My sins here are embellishing my resume. I'm sorry." The revelations come more than a week after a New York Times report first raised questions about the congressman-elect's biography. Santos acknowledged that he never graduated college or worked at 2 major Wall Street firms, as he claimed. But the congressman-elect has denied reporting from the New York Times that he has unresolved criminal charges in Brazil. The New York Times also raised questions about a tax-exempt animal rescue group Santos claims to run. Santos told WABC Radio he never broke the law. Take a listen.
I'm not a fraud. I'm not a criminal who defrauded the entire country and made up this fictional character and ran for Congress. I've been around a long time. I mean, a lot of people know me. They know who I am. A lot of people overstate in their resumes or twist a little bit or ingratiate themselves. I'm not saying I'm not guilty of that. I'm just saying I've done so much good work in my career.
Well, NBC News has reached out to George Santos, but has not received a response. Still to come, fighting for first. New Hampshire takes its place on the presidential primary calendar very seriously and is fighting back hard against plans to append the process in 2024. The head of New Hampshire's Democratic Party joins me next. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. If the Democratic National Committee and President Biden have their way, the 2024 presidential primaries will look dramatically different than they have in years past. Earlier this month, the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee approved a plan for a new primary schedule that would put South Carolina first, stripping Iowa and New Hampshire of their status as the first in the nation caucuses and primaries, respectively. The move came after President Biden recommended South Carolina, the state that launched his comeback in 2020, be the first state of the nominating process, citing the historic importance of black voters to the Democratic Party. New Hampshire lawmakers, both Democrats and Republicans, are pushing back forcefully on the proposal, with a Republican Governor Sununu calling any attempt to change the state's law requiring New Hampshire hold the first primary dead on arrival. And last week, New Hampshire Democratic Party Chair Ray Buckley sent the DNC a letter calling the proposal a, quote, poison pill that punishes New Hampshire voters. And joining me now to discuss this is Ray Buckley, chair of New Hampshire's Democratic Party. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
Let me start off by just letting you respond to really what seems to be the crux of the argument from the DNC, from the Biden administration, that essentially this change is important. It's important to empower a more diverse group of voters. What say you about that?
We absolutely believe in increasing the diversity, especially the Black voters, in the early voting process. If you look at what that calendar will look like with the inclusion of the voters in Georgia and in Michigan, along with Nevada and South Carolina, New Hampshire included, will include tens of millions of Black voters, Latino voters, into this early window process. We support that, absolutely, just as we did in 2006 when we included South Carolina and Nevada into this process. And if you look at what has happened since 2006, the Black voters of South Carolina have actually chosen the nominee, whether it was Barack Obama in 2008, or Hillary Clinton in 2016, or Joe Biden in 2020. So Black voters absolutely have a huge part of this process. But what New Hampshire offers is a small state, a level playing field, where we are well known for our fairness, for being able to allow any candidate to have an opportunity to have success here in New Hampshire. And that is a great place to start. And then over the course of over a month and a half, we'll go through all of these other much larger states with great diverse voters. And we think that's a terrific way of starting off the process.
You make such an interesting point about the fact that South Carolina has effectively chosen so many of the Democratic candidates who have gone on to serve as president. I guess given that, let me follow up with you. Why not reward South Carolina voters given that? And what message do you think it sends if this change doesn't go into effect?
Well, the situation is actually that New Hampshire has a state law which the DNC nor the NHCP have anything to do with. We simply don't have an opportunity to change our law or change our schedule. So the New Hampshire state government is going to conduct this primary with or without the candidacy of Joe Biden, or if he's running again or not. So what's going to happen is that the very first voting that's going to occur is going to be in New Hampshire. Now, if Democrats are not participating in the primary, that sends a very strong message to the battleground state of New Hampshire that Democrats don't care about New Hampshire. And we think that's going to be very detrimental for us in the general election. We have a very closely contested state. Senator Hassan only won her victory in 2016 by 1,017 votes. And we've got an open governor's race coming up, 2 congressional seats that are both in competitive districts that could flip either way. Our legislature is only divided by a total of 5 members. So we don't want to have what happened in 2000 when Al Gore lost New Hampshire by 7,000 votes, and subsequently George Bush was elected.
And let me ask you, because we don't have a whole lot of time left, what recourse do you have? Would you sue the DNC?
No, what will simply happen is the DNC will come up with a laundry list of punishments to New Hampshire Democrats, but we don't have anything to do with it. So
well, how concerned are you about that? How concerned are you about those punishments, that they might not count your electors, for example?
Well, we don't know what they are going to be, but we're certainly concerned that they will impact the general election of 2024. At the end of the game, all of this is about winning the general election of 2024.
All right. I have to end it there because we are out of time for the hour. Ray Buckley, thank you so much. I'll be back tomorrow. Hallie Jackson is up next.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.